Hello Gobs, and welcome to a very special episode of my Final Fantasy series. Hey, if you're not a Gob, subscribe and become a Gob today. I do all sorts of RPG content, both tabletop and video games. This Final Fantasy series is my personal series where I'm playing through all the main entries of Final Fantasy, obviously. From 1 to 16, excluding 11 to 14, they'll get their own episode way later. They're just not going to be included in my choice of main series. I know that's upset some people, but that's how I am doing it, and I have a very good reason. Now, if this is your first time seeing this, well, it probably is because this is Final Fantasy VII, which is arguably the biggest one. After I play a main entry, I then go ahead and make a video where I do a, not an in-depth review. I'm not the best when it comes to reviews. I like reviewing stuff. I don't go super in-depth on like anything like the writing. I'm not going to pick apart the writing. I'm not going to pick apart the sound design or the music or how it looks. This is just purely my personal opinion. So, if there's something that I like that you hated, then tell me in the comments below. And especially so, if there's something that I hate but you love, just tell me in the comments below, and maybe it might change my mind. I'm thinking of doing a remaster on the series eventually, later on, and I will use the comments from the videos to help with that video, to spice it up, give it a different change, so it's just not purely a remaster. It's going to be everybody's comments, and maybe my viewpoints might change later on when I come back to it. But for now, this is my simple goblin review. It's supposed to be like a goblin's talking to you, so it's going to be weird, so let me break that down real quick. Of course, if you're watching these in order, or if this isn't that really long video, this might be long drawn out, so I'm going to cut it short, super short. It'll make sense once I start getting into the review. But I have 4 sections: graphics, gameplay, music, and writing on my 4 sections, and then I usually have like merits, demerits, final thoughts. Those 4 main sections are each worth a gold coin. Music is worth 2 gold coins because I really like music, and a game needs to get at least 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5 for it to be an okay game. That means it meets the bare minimums according to me, which it doesn't take much, but surprisingly there's been a lot of 4 out of 5, even 3 out of 5s on the channel, so obviously, I think I'm developing some sort of taste by doing these, but regardless, I want a game to get 6 out of 5, 7 out of 5, possibly 8 out of 5, which no game has done yet. Anything above 5 out of 5 means it's going to be a great game, once again, according to me. Lastly, before I get into the actual video, if you couldn't tell, I am quite the rambler. I am quite the yapper. And when I get into these little tangents, I may spoil stuff. And just in general, I just might say something and forget that it's actually a spoiler for later on. So this is your spoiler warning. If you haven't played the game yet, I suggest go doing it now, then checking out this game, or just watch it. I don't go too heavy on the spoilers usually. I might in the writing section, but any other time I'm not going to go super in-depth in the spoilers. So if that's anything, I guess you can keep watching then. So that's the last thing. Thank you for watching. I know I'm just a small channel, so hopefully this video does great. Shilly shally dilly dally. This is Final Fantasy Gob's Adventure, Episode 7. Of course, with it being episode 7, and with it being a very special episode, I guess you can tell it's going to be Final Fantasy VII. Now, I'm doing something a bit different before I get into the actual review. I know, I did the intro and I did all this. I have a secondary spiel that I want to talk about real quick. But that's my expectations as I was going into this game. I've seen Final Fantasy VII around. I think most people who play games have probably seen Final Fantasy VII because it's the biggest one. Why? Well, whenever anybody talks about Final Fantasy, guess who's plastered on the front? That's right, it's either Cloud or Sephiroth most of the time. Now, of course, 10 and 9 and 6 and 14 are big ones, and I think even 13 could possibly be up there. I think Lightning's a pretty recognizable character. And then, of course, Noctis from 15 as well. I don't know the main character in 16, but I don't see articles using it. But Cloud is usually the face of Final Fantasy. So I wanted to go into this game not thinking this is going to be the best Final Fantasy, but I also didn't want to be a contrarian, or whatever the word is, where you just hate something because it's the best, or someone tells you it's the best or something like that. So I also didn't go into the game thinking it was going to be really mid. I just went into this thinking it was going to be a game, which I think that's how all people should review things. Obviously, you should go in there with an unbiased opinion and then eventually form a biased opinion based on how the game feels to you. Just a little thing, you know, I'm a big Only Plays fan, not a shout out or anything, but Chris O'Neill, he talks about the game a lot. Of course, there's been some stuff spoiled if I was paying attention, so, but even with the spoilers, I was still quite surprised by the game, so I'll get more into that in my writing section, but this is just a little preamble. But then of course, one last thing regarding the footage for the video. There will be stuff I talk about that I don't show in the video, which I usually try my best to show everything that I'm talking about. I'll spend like 3 to 4 hours of just recording gameplay alone, just so I can have stuff to show you guys. Because I'm a very big fan of show and tell, you know, you talk about something, you want to show it on screen. But stupid me, I decided to play Final Fantasy VII before I started the series. Or I guess I decided to start the series after I beat Final Fantasy VII, so I only had 2 save files. One is right before the tower defense minigame, that's what I'm calling it, where you had to help the big bird in the tower. And then the second is right at Genova, you know, the save you have before you fight the final boss. And those are the only 2 saves I have. So I've been trying to go through in my free time and play through the game again, which has helped me facilitate this review even better, because it's been a couple months since I played it and some stuff's escaped my mind. And of course, I played Final Fantasies 1 through 6, so that's also clouded my mind. So playing through it again has helped. But just know, not all the footage is going to be there for the stuff that I talk about, but I will try my best to go through and play the game up to that point and try to get it. If I'm talking about something you just see regular old combat footage, well, that's... You're just gonna have to work with me here. Hello Gobs, this is Editor Gob. You'll see me throughout the video because I just finished. I didn't finish my second playthrough. I went back through and played through it while also reading some guides, and it has occurred to me that I may have got some stuff wrong. I don't know how many times you're gonna see this, but Editor Gob is out of here. So, with the rambly sections out of the way, oh, we're not out of the rambly sections yet, but just that little rambly sections out of the way, let's actually get into today's review. Now, here's a little bit about the game. I usually go over who directed it, the composer, and anything like that. Anybody that sticks out for the game. I'm not going to go through and read the entire development team. I'm not going to sit and read an entire Wikipedia article. This is just a short little description of the game before we get in there. Obviously, if you play the game, you already know what this game is about, so I'm not really going to give a short description on it, but let's go over what version I played and who worked on it. I played the Steam version of Final Fantasy VII. Now, I don't know if it differs from the original at all. I don't know if they update the music, if they change the gameplay, if they change the graphics. I don't know any of that. So I'm just purely basing this off the Steam version. Now, I did see some screenshots and the characters were like super pixelated or something, which I assume it would work a lot better on these backgrounds, but I'm getting to that in graphics. But just from the looks, it looks like there's some slight change. I don't want to say it's a remaster. It's literally just a port to the Steam. It's just called the Steam version from what I've seen. So that's the version I played. Let's look at who developed and published it. Oh, who would have guessed? It's Square, also known as Squaresoft. But they published it and developed it in 1997, which is 3 years after Final Fantasy VI. Now, development and production for the game started on the Super Nintendo or Super Famicom respectively. Eventually, I'm not sure how far into production they got, but eventually they would take it over and make it for the PS1 instead. So it was released on the PS1 in both America and Japan. Now, if you know anything about the series, you would know Hironobu Sakaguchi directed the first 5 games. He would help on the 6th, and this time he comes back as a producer. I don't know how much a producer has their hand in the game itself. I'm assuming it's not that much because our director is Yoshinori Kitase. I think that's how you say it, but he is one of the directors on Final Fantasy VI, because I think there's 2 directors credited. Regardless, the music is done by Nobuo Uematsu, and that's about it for the development team that I'm going to read from. I'm sure there's a whole long list, and they all deserve praises, but those are some of the key figures on this one. Now, if you don't know anything about Final Fantasy VII, you probably do. Final Fantasy VII is a, well, JRPG set in the dystopian future where the planet is dying to an evil mega corporation known as Shenra, and that's about it. I'll get more into the plot in my writing section, but that's just a little short description of the game. Of course, there's a lot more to it, but again, in my writing section. Now, let's begin with my first section, graphics, visuals, and animations. This will be a bit scatterbrained. My notes aren't complete or lined up correctly, so I will be all over the place. So let's just get right into it. Firstly, this is the first main entry Final Fantasy to be done in 3D. I don't want to say it's the first Final Fantasy to be in 3D because I'm sure there's some spin-off that came after the first 6 or something that was actually in 3D, and now suddenly I'm wrong. So whatever, it's the first main entry to be in 3D. That being said, I enjoyed the style of the game overall. I don't play a lot of old games. I played Fallout once, and comparing it to Fallout 1 and to Ape Escape and whatever, the game looks really good. I'm sure there's a bunch of other older games that are better, but just going off of those, Final Fantasy VII looks really good. The backgrounds, the pre-rendered backgrounds that the characters move on, all a bit jarring because your characters have these like simple little polygonal models, but they're iconic. They get to the point. You can look at each one and know what character they're trying to represent. So these models are really nice, but like I said, it's kind of jarring seeing it on the pre-rendered backgrounds, which are super detailed, and even just the little animations of like stuff moving, lights flickering, people doing stuff in the background. All of it's really nice. Then of course we have actual pre-rendered cutscenes versus in-game cutscenes. So there's like in-game cutscenes that just have the characters moving around, and we have pre-rendered cutscenes which have the simple polygonal models but they're more rendered, and then you have a different type of cutscenes which has the in-game battle models, which are like full human-sized people during the battles. You have these cutscenes that uses those models that are even more detailed, and I don't know what it reminds me of. It looks like a very early age animated movie, but at the same time it's its own uniqueness to it. I'm not quite sure how to explain it. I'm pretty sure this is just how PS1 cutscenes look like back then, which makes perfect sense. You know, it's not going to be cutting edge or anything, but it might have been cutting edge, I don't know. But of course, you don't only have these simple polygonal models. That's the word I use, okay? Blame it on Battlefield 2042, but polygonal, inside joke with my group. But you have these polygonal models, super simple. Then you have the in-game battle models. You have the cutscene models. You have, during the mini games, they also get different models during the mini games. More specifically, just Cloud. I think they actually did push the graphics to the max on the PS1. I don't know entirely if that's true, but it really feels like they were pushing the boundaries with what the PS1 could do. With that, I do want to say, I like the character portraits. I like all the portraits. There's not a single portrait that, you know, makes me feel gross. They're really charming, and they're just really nice portraits. I really do like the menus. There's different fonts being used in different places, and it all works really well. The UI is really nice. Anytime you do a mini game, it's real good. Of course, the font is also iconic in of itself. I'm not sure what else you want me to say. It just looks real good. I like the dynamic battle scenes where anytime you do an action or an enemy's doing something, the camera's always moving. It feels like there's a lot of impact. The characters have different animations for each of their commands. They have like one for attacking and for casting a spell, but they also have one for covering and sensing. There's a variety of animations both for enemies and for the characters, which I was surprised. There's so much happening in battle scenes. I mean, it doesn't look like much when you're just watching it or if you're just doing a normal battle, but when you really stop, pay attention to what's actually happening, you have all these little details. It really feels like they were pushing it. Can I say that? Can I think you were pushing the PS1 to its limits? I can say that, right? Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. There might be a better PS1 game, but the game itself just looks fantastic, from the animations to the graphics to the visuals. But let me get into my gripes real quick. Just some minor things. They don't really impact the game. Some of the enemies just look out of place. Like there's this thing in the Shinra Tower that's just a swordfish. Not a swordfish. It's like a banner in the shape of the fish. It's like a, I think the Japanese, they have the fish banners, but it's like that. Instead it's like a bunch of jagged edges along the banner and something. It's like, it just feels really out of place. There's like a house in the slums. Eventually later on in the game you fight dice and stuff, and it just feels like some of the enemies are just out of place, but it also keeps you on your toes because you'll just be fighting the same enemy and then you'll just see this random otherworldly creature and it's like, okay, I guess. But regardless, you can just mark it up to, I guess Shinra's just experimenting. You know, Dr. Hojo and his, is he a doctor? Scientist Hojo? Whatever, that freaking freak, a literal freak. I didn't realize until I started playing through the game again how just much of a freak this guy is. I don't know how I completely forgot that, but this guy's weird. But more on that in the writing section. Regardless, another thing, it can sometimes be hard to tell where you have to go or what you can actually interact with. Like obviously items will stand out, but sometimes I will be running along the edge just rapidly tapping OK button or the interact button trying to see if I can actually get over to the area, and sometimes you have to line up perfectly with the thing in order to interact with it. You can't just like somewhat face it, you have to line up perfectly. And then in certain parts of the map, like I said, it can be hard to tell where you have to go. Like in the slums, I got stuck here because this little pipe going across here, it looks like it goes across, but really you have to go down and then go up it to move on. It's just minor things like that. Of course, there is the assist mode, which doesn't help with stuff like that, but it does put a pointer above your character's head, so if you ever move behind anything in the foreground, you know where you're at so you don't get lost. It also points red arrows at exits, which can be really useful if you can't tell what's an entrance and what's not an entrance. But like I said, sometimes those aren't marked. Sometimes you have to just walk along the wall until you find what you're looking for. But again, it's not the biggest thing in the world. It's just a little nitpick. Let's talk about one last gripe I had about the game that I kept forgetting to include. But the summon animations for most of the summons in this game are incredibly long. I'm talking right now and you're seeing the Bahamut Neo, Bahamut X, something on there. The final Bahamut that you get from the game that you have to do a bunch of other stuff, optional stuff to get. But you're seeing it on screen. This is how long it takes every single time you summon them. And I'm sure I'll cut this audio off. And I might do a funny thing where I say cut and I cut in the middle of it, especially if the animation's over. So once that's over, I'll get back into talking about the actual thing. I think it should be over now, so I guess you can cut it here. Maybe now cut it here. Regardless, I trolled myself doing this. Not only are they long, but it's whatever. I can set my controller, I can set my keyboard down, whatever, as the animation plays out. Nothing's going to change. But then I trolled myself because I had set up on cloud. You might be seeing it on screen because I have the original save file. But I have the counter materia that says when attacked, you have a chance. Or it doesn't say this to a T, but whenever he's attacked, it works like counter. There's a chance to counter attack. The counter materia, not the one that says, counter with a physical attack. This is a different materia. It's counter magic, I think it's called, or whatever. Anyways, you counter with a spell or a summon. This Neo Bahamut, or Bahamut X, I forget whatever, the one that casts Tetra Flare, that takes forever, that you just saw. I had set it up on cloud, that every time he took damage, he had a chance to summon this, which doesn't sound that bad because it's just a random chance and it's only whenever he takes damage. But I gave him a master level cover materia. This means that it has a 100% chance to cover for another party member. Now in previous games, cover worked. If they were low health, they would cover for them. This one, if they take any sort of physical damage that targets one character, he covers for them. So any time one of the other two characters were attacked, he would cover for them. And whenever he's attacked, he has a chance to counter. You get the idea. I saw this summon animation so much because I guess I wanted to troll myself. I mean, it is a really powerful summon. It still does cost an MP or whatever, but every single time he gets damaged, I have a chance to see this, and it's abysmally long. Yeah, I trolled myself. Again, the whole thing is summon animations are very long, and I think they continue with this in later games. And then, finally, that's my gripes. The game looks good. I love the magical effects. There's a variety of different magical effects for each spell, for each action, for each enemy ability, for each command. There's just so much happening in the game. And I would have definitely forgotten it if I hadn't gone back through and played through it again. But there really is just a lot happening. Like just the dynamic battle scenes alone, because I'm also playing Final Fantasy VIII again to also get footage for that. And it's kind of bland comparing it to 7. But I'll get to that in Final Fantasy VIII. I like the graphics and I like how much it's changing because from 1 through 6, it starts to get a bit silly. Each one spices it up a little bit. 5 and 6, they really spice it up, but for the most part, you're kind of playing like the same thing over and over, and then you get hit with 7, and it's like, woo! I could only imagine back then being a Final Fantasy fan, playing the same game year after year. Like, some people love it, and then you get 7, and it's just like a smack in the face. Not a smack in the face, that sounds like you hated it, but it's like exciting, it's fresh, it's new, and it's I can really see why a lot of people like this game. Of course, all the characters are iconic, which I want to name them off real quick before I award the coins. But we have our main playable characters, which are Cloud, Tifa, Barret, Aerith, or Arius. The default name's Arius, but everyone calls her Arieth. I think that's how you say it. I might be butchering that name too, but we have Red 13, you get Kate Sif, Sid, then the two optional characters, Yuffie and Vincent, which I'm sure I'm showing them all on screen. But I love all of their designs. I love all their battle models, their portraits. Their designs are real nice. They're memorable. You can look at them, remember who they are. They all just stick out, except for Kate Sif. I didn't like Kate Sif. I'm sure some people find him adorable. I don't like him. For good reason, too, in the writing. I didn't like him before I even knew everything that was surrounding his character. So even then, I just didn't like him. But I like everybody else. I really like Vincent. He's cool. Of course, we have Scientist Hojo. We have Vice President. Or he was Vice President, but now he's the President of Shinran, Rufus. It's real nice. We have the three goobers, which I forget their name. It's Sing, Reno, Guy, and I forgot the lady's name. Forgive me. I'm really bad with names, if you couldn't tell. You have those three, the three Turks, or four Turks? It's 3 or 4. Anyways, it's the Turks working for Rufus, also reoccurring characters that show up. And then you have, well, the man himself, Sephiroth, which I really like Sephiroth. I wanted to get a poster of Sephiroth to put in my room. I wanted to get a display, actually, of Sephiroth. I really like Sephiroth's design, but I also really like Vincent's design. Of course, everyone else is up there too. So, what can I say? The game just looks great. It looks amazing. I kind of want to give it 2 gold coins, which is a new thing. I haven't given any game 2 gold coins, but I really... just playing through all of them, yeah, I gotta give it 2 gold coins. What can I say? I'm a sucker for the designs, I guess. So 2 gold coins. Let's move on to my next session. Like I said, I told you I was gonna be all over the place. I was gonna be rambly, but I think I covered all the graphics and visuals and animations as well. So here it is, 2 gold coins for graphics, visuals, and animations. Now, if you're new around here, you thought that was long. Wait till I get into gameplay and mechanics. You know, if you've seen that first section, you probably already know. You probably already set the video to 2 times speed. Regardless, let's move into gameplay and mechanics. As I said before, this is usually one of my longest sections, but I'll try to keep it short just for you little gobs. So before I get into what actually separates the game from the others, which of course all the stuff in here will separate it from the previous games, I'm starting to do this now. I'll go over general notes for the game itself. So let's just begin it. Much like the last 2 Final Fantasies, Final Fantasy VII uses active time battle. You can switch between active and wait like previously, but now there's a new option called recommended, which I have no idea what it does. Like before, the bar fills up and then you get to select an action. You have the standard, attack, defend, change rows, use items, and etc. But are able to get more commands using the materia system, which I'm saving for last. Or I hope I'm saving for last. I might go into some weird tangent after the materia, but I'm going to try to get everything before I get into materia. Anyways, difficulty-wise, the game wasn't that difficult. I only died once to the super boss, or maybe it was just a regular boss. I'm not sure, but that's the only time I died. I got stuck at random points in the map, but I already talked about that, so I just used the guide to see where I was actually supposed to go. Let's talk about traveling. You can travel by foot, or car, or sea, or shore, or flying, or underwater, and, as always, chocobo. Each one, besides air, can only be used in certain areas, like shore, which is a broken plain, can only be used in shallow water, and underwater can only be used in, there's not that big of an underwater map. At least I didn't explore that much, but I'm pretty sure you're just stuck to this one little area. I'm not sure if I'll show it, but I like this area. This area is pretty good. I like the underwater stuff. Now, if you've seen the other episodes, most of them have chocobo traveling. But one thing I keep pointing out is that you are not forced to ride chocobos. It's more like an optional thing, but for being such a mascot character or the face of the game almost, you think you would have to use chocobos a lot more, and in this game you actually do. You actually do have to use a chocobo, or sorta. In this one area of the map there's a desert that has a large monster, and when you encounter it the first time at this early level, it's really hard to beat unless you grind. but you can bypass it to get to the next area, because you got to get through the desert to go to the next area. You can ride a chocobo, which is able to outrun the monster. And even if you beat the monster, it spawns another one, and you just have to keep fighting. So you're really gonna have to grind. Not that you would even have the material to do it, but I digress. I want to talk about how you actually get a chocobo, because in previous ones you could just go to a forest and rent it, or you have to go up to it and just freely hop on it and ride it. But here they do it much differently. So on the world map there's chocobo tracks. That's it. You never guess what happens here, but if you have the chocobo lore materia, you're able to encounter chocobos in random battles as you walk across these tracks. Then, in the battle, you must defeat every other enemy, but the chocobo will run away swiftly, and you can't use your attack all because you will kill the chocobo. So, to get around this, you have to use special greens or any other chocobo food on the chocobo. How many times am I going to say chocobo? Take a shot every time I say chocobo. Drinking game, Gob's drinking game. Just kidding, don't do that, your liver will explode. Once you use the chocobo food on the chocobo, depending on the rarity or the quality of the food that you use, determines how long the chocobo will stick in the battle. Of course, you can keep using the food on it to make it stick around, but once you defeat all the enemies, you will return to the world map on the chocobo. And then you can use it, well, to cross the desert, or you can take it to your airship to do the chocobo breeding part of the game. I didn't do it. You just use the chocobos in chocobo racing, but a lot of people have fond memories of it. I didn't, so I'm not going to knock the game for it, and I'm not going to give it anything extra. I might do it on my second playthrough. You know, I have to do it on my second playthrough. But just know I didn't do it, but that is an option that you can do. I was reading some guides, and it turns out there's like 4 caves on the map. Technically, you can get to one without the chocobo, but chocobo breeding is more to it than I thought. So, you know the capture process for the chocobo, but then you have to race, and then once you race them, you get a variety of different chocobos, such as a mountain chocobo, a river chocobo, there's a green chocobo, I think, and then there's a gold chocobo, which lets you go just about anywhere on the map. So in the late game, when you lose the buggy, or you lose, I forget the airplane, but you lose traveling by shallow water, you can't access these extra caves that are surrounded on the map. You have to specifically go and do chocobo breeding, and these caves contain really strong materia, and I think some items or whatever. Also, I think you can get mithril to take to this guy to make strong weapons. I don't think they're that strong actually, but there's that. So chocobo breeding isn't only just for racing, so I'm probably going to do it in my second playthrough just to see how it is, so it'll probably be in a remaster or whatever. And that's it for chocobo traveling. It's similar in other games where you just, run across the map faster and you don't encounter enemies. So it was really nice seeing well, I guess it's so optional, but it's really nice seeing that you kind of have to use a chocobo. You actually have to use a chocobo, and it's kind of almost like a puzzle, and it's in a mini game in of itself, because of course you can't hit the chocobo, so you can't use your attack all spells. But let's move on. I got the travel out of the way, we got the how the battles work and all that, of course not everything, but you might be wondering about those mini games. Of course, aside from battling, you're always doing something. From what I realized, some of it's optional, but there's always some sort of mini game, even if it's not an entire section. Like you have sectional mini games that carry you over to the next section. For example, like I said, once you get to the bottom of the Shinra Tower, there's this mini bike game. Well, not a mini bike, it's a bike game. But anyways, Cloud's on a bike, which that seems to be one of his character traits now because he's on a bike in Advent Children, but whatever. Getting back to the actual game. Cloud's on a bike, you have to smack enemies so they don't hit the truck, and then it's really fun. I mean, I was surprised. I kind of forgot about it until I played through it again, but this minigame's really fun. There's like a tower defense one where you have to, well, I had to grind for money because the more money you give to these guys, the more units you can buy in battle. Of course, you could just let the units come up to the top and then you can just fight them yourselves. So the whole idea is to save your resources by spending guild to buy units. I don't like this mini game. It's completely optional though. You can just walk right past it, say whatever, screw off, leave me alone. But of course you miss out on the Phoenix materia. I'll get into materia later. Of course you have all the gold saucer events, which there's the tournament, chocobo racing, and that's all I can remember. I'm sure there's another game or two in there, but I'm trying to think of all the mini games. I can't think of too many. There's a submarine hunting one. There's, well, probably the biggest one is snowboarding. I think it's the biggest one because of the scene that happens a little bit before it. Of course, if you don't give it any time, if you're just doing the story straight in a row. Spoiler. Are you gone now? Or are you still here? Whatever. The scene where Arif dies, it's like the biggest spoiler in the game. You can literally find gifs of it happening. But whatever. Arif dies, and then a little bit after, if you just keep doing the story, you end up in a snow village and you can just snowboard. And like I'm going to reference Only Plays, but he had a video of that happening, which is funny. It's a funny animation, but I guess go watch that if you want. I finally understand now. That's another thing. I saw all these memes about the game and whatnot, and then finally playing through the game and being able to see all the memes. It's an experience. I forgot. Oh, Metal Gear Solid 3 was the same way. I've seen all these Metal Gear Solid 3 memes, and then when you play through it, you're like, oh, I recognize that, whatever. But that's all the mini games. Like I said, when you're going and you're just doing the story, they always introduce something new to do. Either it's like CPR, there's like a dexterity base where you have to dodge boulders, rolling it down. You actually have to time it perfectly. There's like the self section and the Shinra. There's puzzles that you have to do throughout the game. So there's a lot more stuff besides battling that's happening. I can't show it all, obviously, because that would take forever to go back through and record everything they're saying. I might do it in a remaster. Anyways, the key point is that you're always doing something. I don't like the snowboarding, but I do like most of the other mini games. I don't like the tower defense. That was a bit obnoxious and takes just a bit too long. Just let me kill the enemies myself, which I'm sure you can do. But to cut things short, let's just keep moving on, and let's move on into the next little category, which this is the first Final Fantasy to establish the name Limit Breaks. They had them in Final Fantasy VI, but they didn't call them Limit Breaks. Here, whenever you take damage, and depending on how much damage you take, fills the limit bar by that much. So if you take a little bit of damage, the bar fills a little bit. Take a lot of damage, that bar fills a lot. Once it's filled, it replaces the attack action until you use said limit break. All the limit breaks in the game are cool. I can't name every single one because for each character they have 4 levels, the 4th one being known as Ultimate. Each limit break level has 1 to 3 moves that they can learn the more they use the limit break. Which Aerith doesn't really count, she only gets half the limit break. I don't know if she has a final limit break. Aerith does have a final limit break that you have to get before, she gets slink before that happens. So you have 9 characters, each one has 4 levels. Oh man, I wasn't expecting to do math in the middle of this. So you have 9 characters, each one has 4 levels. No. You gotta take 4 levels of limit break, each one can, let's say average 2, because some of them get 2, some of them get 3. So let's say 2 on average, that's 8, with the ultimate being 1. So I guess 8 minus, whatever. 8 times 9 minus 7. There's like 60 different limit breaks for each character. There you go. Gob maths. But each of the limit breaks are powerful, they're cool. Whenever you select the next level limit break, the limit break bar has to fill more. I'm assuming it takes longer to get to a level 2 limit break than it does a level 1 limit break. Of course, the payoff is that those limit breaks are usually stronger. I'm sure there's some strategy guide like, actually, this level 1 limit break's a lot better because you can get a lot quicker than the level 3 limit break, and the damage output is much better on the 1 since you can do it more often, or something like that. Some nerd emoji thing happening. But most of the time, the next level limit breaks are stronger than the previous. And each character has a wide variety. Of course, Barrett's revolves around guns and throwing grenades. Red 13 has physical moves. So does Cloud has physical moves. Tifa has a slot mechanic. Vincent can transform. Yuffie does ninja stuff. I don't know what Sid or Kate Sif does because I can't remember. I think Sid just has physical attacks. I didn't get a lot of the limit breaks because I was trying to use everyone equally. But if you use everyone equally, then you don't get to level up their limit breaks often. So I didn't get a lot of the final limit breaks, but just for you, Gobs, I went through my final save file and I went and grabbed Tifa's limit break. So here it is, because you actually have to play the keys correctly for a limit break to work it. You don't have to play anything for Tifa's. You just had to play that piano part to get Tifa's final limit break. Her entire thing is a bunch of slots. You'll be seeing it on screen. Now, let's start getting into some of the more juicier stuff, and that is the party system. Somewhere along the line, much similar to Final Fantasy VI, you have a variety of permanent party members, aside from one. I think you guys know who it is and what happens to them. But there's also segments where you don't always have all the characters available, but for the most part, you have most, if not all, the characters available to make teams from. But they do give you a wide variety of team members. All the team members are good, just like in Final Fantasy VI. Also, your party size is only 3 characters now, which would be the standard party size going forward, at least in 8 and 12. Also, you can only have 3 party members. I don't know about 9 or 10 or 13, but I know in 8 and 12 you only have 3 party members, so I'm assuming that's the standard now. Previous games it was 4, except for Final Fantasy IV, which had 5 party members, but all the other Final Fantasies you had 4. So that's just a little tidbit. This game started a 3-person party. I want to go over them, and then I'll go over them more in the writing. I don't feel like I touched up on the characters as often in my other ones, so I really want to dig deep and start hitting the characters physically. I want to beat these characters. No, just kidding. I just want to talk about them. So, our characters are Cloud, the main character, and is one of the main faces of Final Fantasy VII itself. He's the Buster Sword wielding ex-soldier with a complicated past. We have Tifa, the unarmed combat expert. But anyways, we have Barrett, the brash gun for an arm, bioterrorist leader of Avalanche, who has a daughter. We have Aerith, the staff-wielding, flower-selling. She's basically a white mage. There's no class titles in this one, which is pretty unique compared to all the other ones. There's not a single class title, but I'll get into that just a little bit later. But she's essentially the white mage. She's just really good at healing. She doesn't do a lot of physical damage, or she possibly could with the materia system. But I'll get into the materia system right after this. We have Red 13, the flaming tail sentient beast thing that Hojo tries to get to do something to Area for that. When I played through this game, I completely forgot about that, and that really threw me off guard, and I gotta say, I was quite uncomfortable. So if that's what they were going for, they did an amazing job. We have Sid, the rocket scientist, whose dreams were crushed due to a, well, so he thinks, woman's negligence. And then we have Kate Sif. He's a puppet thing that has a phone thing that I don't like Kate Sif. We have Yuffie, the ninja princess who loves materia. And then finally, we have Vincent, the ex-Turk with a large metal gauntlet. I love any character that has a large metal gauntlet for a hand and the rest of him is normal. But he's awesome. He wields a gun. I don't really like his limit break. And that is the characters. Like I said, throughout most of the game, you can freely swap between them except certain story moments. But for the most part, you can use whoever you want as much as you want. And let's move into our final system. I think I've covered absolutely everything about the game so far except the main component of the game, the materia system. So bear with me. This is going to be our last little segment. So finally, last section of gameplay and mechanic that widely sets it apart, like I said, the previous sections do as well, but that is the materia system. Every character can equip a weapon, armor, and one accessory, but the accessory doesn't matter in this case because each weapon and armory has a set amount of materia slots. They have a single slot or a paired slot. What do they do? Well, let's first talk about materia. Materia are the planet's energy condensed into a sphere that the person who uses it absorbs. At least that's what they do in Advent Children. Regardless, materia have a variety of effects. They're basically everything from the previous game. If you want a command like steal, cover, throw, that's a materia. You want spells like fire, thunder, and blizzard? Well, too bad. They're not in this one. They are. They just switched the names to fire, ice, and bolt for some reason. I'm not sure why. I'm sure someone can tell me in the comments below. Look, guys, I really like comments. I like reading comments, okay? But regardless, if you want summons like Ifrit and Shiva, also materia. Everything is materia. Want more HP? Want more MP? Materia. You want your spells to be able to hit all the opponents or all your allies? Materia. So, with that being said, said, you can start to get the idea everything in the game comes down to materia. So like I said, each weapon and armor has a variety of materia slots. They can also have passive effects like having elemental damage or something like that. So it's not only materia slots, but let's look at the slots themselves. Like I said, there's a single and a paired slot. Single slot, well, you usually reserve that for not summons, but for like passive effects such as cover. The paired slots are for certain materia combinations. Now the easiest one, and the example I'm going to give you, is take a spell and you use the all materia. You'll never guess what it does. It lets that spell hit all of its targets. So fire hits all enemies, Kier hits all allies. You also have stuff like the elemental materia, which you pair it with the spell, allows the character's normal attacks to inflict that element. Sometimes, I think. It's not a guaranteed chance. Playing through the game again, I played through the beginning, but I also loaded up my final save file, of course, to fight Genova and Sephiroth for the footage. But I also went through and left the final dungeon in order to find more materia and just try to get to the secrets I missed. There's so much more materia in the game than I could ever talk to you about. Also, you can do a crazy combination of different materia, because as I was talking about the pair slots, there's one that increases the power of the pair spell, but it uses more MP. I paired it with Ultima to make Ultima more Ultima. You got W item, which lets you use 2 items at the same time. And then there's another one called W Magic, which lets you use 2 magics at the same time. So if you played Final Fantasy VI, it's like the soul of Thamasa. So just a little note that there's way more materia in the game than I had originally imagined. That brings me to the level up. Each materia has a different amount of levels. Some might not have any levels, they just have level 1, while others can go all the way up to like, I think there's like a one that has like level 5, and maybe even one that's further. But anyways, certain materials have different levels. You level up the materia, they get better effects. So if you level up the all materia, it lets you keep using the fire all on all the enemies more than once. So level 1, use it once. Level 2, I think you can use it 3 times. All might be the one that's level 5, so you might have to get it to level 3 to use it 3 times. You start to get the idea. You level up the materia by getting, I'm not sure what's it called, just materia points. After each battle, you get XP that goes towards materia. Level up the materias, either you get better effects such as Fire 1, Fire 2, Fire 3. The stronger versions use more MP. Cover increases the chance for cover to trigger, so it can go all the way up to 100%, so that character always covers for another character. And so on forth. The summons lets you summon them more than once per battle, so level 2 you can summon them twice, and it lets a summon be stronger whenever you do summon them, and you start to get an idea. Each materia has a certain amount of levels that you can level up, but that's not it. Most materia also have a stat benefit, so the spell materias can increase one's magic but lowers their strength, whereas something like cover increases vitality, or something like steel increases agility. Using the materia systems, slotting them into the weapons and armor, you can start to build your own classes. So if you want somebody to be a wizard, just give them all the magic materia, anything that increases magic or MP, just give it to them, give them an accessory that increases their magic even further, and boom, they're a wizard. Anybody can be a wizard. Barrett can be a wizard. Red 13 can be a wizard. Cloud can be a wizard. Or vice versa. You can give them all the physical stuff that buffs their vitality. So you can make Barrett a tank, or Cloud a tank, or Red 13 a tank. Anybody can be anything. I always love customizability. It reminded me of Final Fantasy VI, but even better because you can freely swap out the materia while there. They have to level up to get their stat change. So here, it's even better. The materia system is fantastic. That's it, guys. Overall, like usual, I enjoyed the gameplay of this one immensely. The vast materia system, fun. The limit breaks, fun. The minigames, somewhat fun. But overall, the gameplay is so good, so who would have guessed, it gets 2 gold coins. And we are moving on to our hopefully shorter sections. Okay guys, it's all downhill from here. Let's get into our next category: sound design, voice acting, and music. Sound design usually doesn't get notes, since a good sound design you don't usually notice. You either notice horrible sounds or lack of sounds. But good sound design won't have you thinking about it at all, because sounds should seamlessly work within the environment of the game that you're playing. I learned that one from a YouTuber recently. Anyways, the sound design game is as with most games. Good. There's a lot of good sound design here. There's good moments. I forgot to mention this in the game. Well, not really gameplay. I can mention it here, but there is a actual horror segment. At least it's horror. I can't say horror, right guys? Bear with me. But there is a scary segment in the game. Ooh, if you never played through it before. I like the part where Cloud walks up to Jenova. There's this heartbeat. It's really building up the tension, and then it plays a little cutscene where he looks into it, and then it's not a jump scare, but it was really cool and really horrifying the first time I saw it. It really gives Jenova this ominous presence of this ominous otherworldly being, and it's so cool. And then later on in the Shinra Tower, I guess you guys can tell where I got in my replaying of the game, but later on there's an actual horror segment where there's no sounds except for the ominous soundtrack that's playing, because you're walking around, there's dead bodies, blood on the ground. There's the ominous track, there's no sounds. Even when you get into fights, the little battle sound, whenever you encounter a sound, actually jump scared me because I was so focused, like, something's going to happen. There's no standard battle music, there's no victory music, it's just that same looping soundtrack until you get to the top of the tower, and it's really cool. And I'm sure there's more segments like this throughout the game, so just going off that alone, the sound design here, it's really good. Now, moving on, there's no voice acting. Of course, with One Winged Angel, you have the chorus, as most Final Fantasy bosses have. I'm not sure if this is an actual chorus, as in the original game, or if this is just Nobuo Uematsu's using his synthesizer really well. I can't tell, but it's not really voice acting. I just like to make notes on voices in the game, and there's no voices. That's about the closest thing to a voice there is. So someone can comment if it's an actual choir in the soundtrack, or if it's just Nobuo Uematsu just being the usual go he is. But with that, talking about the music, let's actually look at the soundtrack, and the soundtrack is freaking gigantic with a lot of memorable tracks. So here are a couple. Of course, you have the fight theme, which is Those Who Fight, or all the covers are called Those Who Fight, but the actual soundtrack itself is called Let the Battles Begin. I don't know why, maybe there's something about it there, but it's the battle theme of the game. Of course, they spruce up the victory theme. They actually put a little bit of a twist on it than usual. You have Fight On, which is the boss theme. Of course, we have Aerith's theme, Tifa's theme, which I'm pretty sure is the overworld music. You have the bombing mission. You have Jenova, of course. You have probably the best soundtrack in the game, possibly One Winged Angel. I personally have 5 different covers in my playlist, including the original, also in my playlist. You know, I like One Winged Angel quite a lot, but of course we have the Snow Village music. I really enjoy that. There's just a lot of soundtracks in this game I like. I'm not a music theory expert or anything, and I can't go over the sections where the music works. Like the little Jenova part, they're not really Genovas, where Sephiroth's just killing everybody in the Shinra Tower, but that little section worked really well for me. That was awesome. And like I said, going off of that, I'm pretty sure there's a lot more segments in the game. I guess I can try to get into the music a bit. When you're in the slums and city and stuff, there's a lot of like metallic sounds in the song, which just gives this vibe of being in this industrial era, I guess. Does that make sense? Like I said, I'm not a music theory, I'm not a composer myself or anything, but I could just tell you, I like the music. Music good. Music gets 2 gold coin. Me move into next section, which is writing. Once again, spoiler warning, I will be talking about the story, but I won't try to get in depth. I'm just going to give a short synopsis, a very, very short synopsis, and then go over some of the key characters that I like and try to remember the story based off my memory as best as I can. Let's get into it. You start off as playing as Cloud, a merc hired for Avalanche, who are destroying one of Shinra's generators, I'm pretty sure. So in the game, there's this evil mega corporation known as Shinra, and for years now, I'm not sure how long, but they've been drawing on the planet's life energy, or the energy that comes from the life stream, called Mako. So they draw Mako, turn it into energy, and this lets the people at the top of the company live comfortable lives, or anybody above the plates of Midgar, the first city that you start out in. And then there's people down below who live in the slums, you know, usual super evil mega corporation shenanigans. Barrett is the leader of Avalanche. He wants to stop Shinra. Eventually, you learn about Sephiroth. Sephiroth comes in, kills the president of Shinra. Rufus, the president's son, comes in, becomes the new leader of Shinra, and now now Shinra want to get to the promised land, and so does Sephiroth, and Cloud doesn't want either Shinra nor Sephiroth to get to them. So now it becomes this big three-way fight where Shinra's chasing after Sephiroth, Cloud and his party are chasing after Sephiroth. They have to fight off Shinra, they have to fight off Sephiroth. Of course, they aren't their only enemies. There's other enemies throughout the game that also try to stop them, but they're the pretty prominent big bad guys. Rufus wants to use the planet's energy. He wants to use the Mako generators to defeat Sephiroth, because Sephiroth opens up the planet, or he makes a crack in the planet that, it's been a while guys, bear with me, but it releases Titans, and the Titans are going around destroying the cities. Sephiroth wants to summon a meteor that smashes into the live stream, so Shinra has to fight off the Titans, so does Cloud have to fight off the Titans. Cloud is chasing down Sephiroth. That's basically the story. It's just Cloud and his party chasing down Sephiroth, trying to fight off Shinra, and Shinra's trying to chase out Sephiroth while also trying to fight off Cloud. So, going over the characters again, we have, well, I'm saving Cloud and Tifa for the last. So we have Barrett, who has to confront his past because he comes from a mining town, and eventually you go back to that mining town, which you can worsen his reputation with. That's one thing about this game. There's a lot of decisions that you get to make that somewhat impact the story. Like even picking up the two optional characters, Yuffie and Vincent, although they don't show up in major cutscenes, they do show up in the story at different parts later on. And if you don't pick them up, they're just not there. So there's a lot of decisions. For example, you can like save this mining village, or you can let the train crash into them, and then Barrett will be seen as a hero for the slums, or the people will hate him more. And of course, I think there's other little decisions like this that you can do throughout the game, which is a new one for Final Fantasy, because going back over 1 through 6, you're in a more linear story. Of course, this story is linear as well, but like I said, there's just the little freedom of choice. Like you can pick different paths to go. Like when you're at the Shinra Corp, you can either go through the lobby and just brute force your way all the way up, or you can go to the side and climb the stairs and take like a sneaky path all the way up. So like I said, it's not completely non-linear, but there is a ton of optional stuff that you can do in the game that somewhat have an impact on the story. But going back over it, Barrett, he's the leader of Avalanche. He has a daughter that he has to constantly look out for, but he also has to constantly leave because he wants to save the planet. But of course, you can't drag I'm not sure how old Marlene is, but you can't drag her into a fight against soldiers where stuff is exploding and you're fighting giant monsters. So he has to end up leaving her alone a lot until she gets kidnapped by Shinra due to, well, I already gave a spoiler warning, but Cat Sif, let's throw in his storyline here. He's a double agent working for Shinra, betraying the party until they find out, oh, who would have guessed the guy I had a bad feeling, off feeling about is actually a bad guy. And then you're like, oh, why does he save with the party? Well, because he kidnaps Marlene and Aerith's mom, not her real mom, but her adopted mom, and now basically using them as leverage so Kate Sif can stay in a party. Eventually, after traveling with the party for so long, I guess he has a change of heart that he wants to help the planet instead, so he does a thing later on in the game. This thing is crushing, he sacrifices it. It's a puppet. So he sacrifices the puppet, and then a new puppet joins the crew or whatever. But anyway, it's just one of these head executives that he's the, let's see if I can get this right, he's the head of urban development and planning in Shinra. And it's actually cool playing through the game again because you can see he kind of goes against most of the other head of Shinra's. Not most, he goes against all of them. And you can actually see this going through the story, and then you learn he's Kate Sif, which is pretty cool. So I don't entirely hate Kate Sif, but that's Kate Sif. We have Red 13. He was a science experiment for Hojo, but I think he got kidnapped. And then you return back to his village, you find out about his father. He doesn't like his father because he thinks his father's a coward. Then he eventually learns his father's actually a hero that saved the village, and he's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't, I don't know. I don't know what the lesson is there. His father's a good guy. That's the lesson. We have Aerith, who has to deal with being an ancient and finding her purpose or being able to stand on her own. She gets kebabbed by Sephiroth throughout half the game. So if you're wondering, oh, who's that one party member? Well, that's like the biggest twist ever that's been revealed in the game, is her dying. It's like, oh, like I said, you can literally find gifs of her being kebabbed in like Discord or whatever. So it's not that big of a deal. So when I came across that, I expected that to be the biggest twist in the game, but it wasn't. Of course, we have Sid, the rocket scientist. His dreams got crushed by a woman who he thought was sabotaging, or she was trying to fix the rocket so it didn't actually kill him. He thought she was just like overreacting. Basically, she wasn't doing her job right. That's what he thought. Then you find out, oh, she actually did do her job right. Even then, no matter how much crappily Sid treated her, she was still willing to die for him. That's some hard commitment, because she felt at fault for ruining Sid's dream, and then it's like, oh, Yeah, Sid's just an a-hole who couldn't wait. I'm not sure if he's exactly an a-hole, but he gives off that vibes. He's both like this, sometimes he's a chill dude, but he just gets really angry sometimes. But he was an enjoyable character. I did like Sid, so maybe I was just reading wrong, and when I play back through the game again, that little segment, I might view it in a different light. But regardless, let's move on. Yuffie, she is a ninja princess. Her dad runs the head of her ninja village, so that technically makes her a princess. I'm not sure where I got princess from. I'm pretty sure I've seen it on some form or something, but she is the daughter to the head of the village, so that technically makes her a princess. She just wants to get a lot of materia and deliver it to her village so her village can return to its former glory. That's her whole thing. She even has a completely optional side quest where she takes all your materia, and even if you find materia in the village, she'll show up and take it. Really charming. This entire story is both deep and charming. It's deeper than I could ever sit here and explain it to you, but regardless, let's get into Vincent and then finally Tifa and Cloud. So Vincent, let me get this right. Let me see if I can remember this. His wife birthed Sephiroth, but while in the room, scientist Hojo injected Sephiroth with Genova cells, completely changing his DNA so that he was no longer a human. So he's not technically Vincent's son, and now Vincent feels guilty for not stopping Hojo for creating Sephiroth. So now Vincent wants to travel with the party to stop Sephiroth and get his revenge on Hojo, which he eventually does, and it's very anticlimactic. He doesn't say anything about it. He's like, oh, that was you, Hojo? Oh, and I think that's it. But anyways, that's Vincent's storyline, and I was wrong about Vincent. So his storyline, I was talking about his wife. I don't think it was his wife. I'm not sure the entirety, how these two characters were related. But it's Vincent, his girlfriend / wife. Something happens. She wants to do an experiment. It's not Dr. Hojo, but it's some other scientist. Anyways, she ends up getting pregnant, not with Vincent's child. It's with this scientist's child. And then that's when Sephiroth is conceived, gets injected with Genova cells. Vincent feels guilty because he's like, well, I could have helped, but then he did actually try to help. I think he tried to help or try to stop it or somewhat, but then he got captured, he got experimented on, and throughout the game, he believes that it is his punishment. He was unable to intervene, and now he's forced to watch everything, and when you meet him, he's tired of watching everything, so he joins the party in order to, well, right his wrongs, basically. That's Vincent's whole storyline. But let's get into Tifa and Cloud. The most complicated one. I'm going to give you a super short cookie cutter sweet version. So throughout the game, Cloud is battling with his memories. And then all this time, you think he's chasing after Sephiroth, but instead, he was following Sephiroth. Hojo messes with his mind a bit, makes him think, or makes you believe, the player believe, that Cloud isn't even a real person, that Cloud is just a science experiment, or so you think, until Cloud falls into the live stream. He goes into catatonic shock. He actually becomes disabled. I don't know what the medical term for it is, but Tifa goes and visits him from time to time during this portion of the game. The team is dealing with who wants to be the next leader while Cloud is recovering, so that's what's happening during that game. Of course, the Titans are coming down, attacking everyone, but also the party has to stop Shinra. There's just so much crap happening in the story. It's really good. Like I said, better than I could ever explain it. So anyways, eventually Tifa goes to Cloud, a Titan attacks. Tifa and Cloud fall into the live stream that's right underneath the place, the village that he's in, and in this little segment, you walk through Cloud's memories with Tifa, and you find out that Cloud is a real person, that his memories were real, and it's a really cool segment, because the first choice is like, oh, there was this guy, Zack, and in Tifa's memories and in Cloud's memory, they just took Zack's memory and put it in Cloud, so Cloud's not actually a real person, he actually has fake memories, and Tifa just remembers Cloud and Zack's place, or something like that, or Tifa doesn't want to tell Cloud the truth, something like that. But even then, Tifa's like, oh, I don't actually know who Cloud is. And then they walk through the memories and like, wait a minute, he is a real person. He was actually at that village. Turns out, when Cloud joined the soldier, he actually failed the program. Not wanting to embarrass himself, he put on the mask, and in the flashback where you see Sephiroth destroying Tifa and Cloud's original home village, you see Sephiroth before he went crazy, or Coco, whatever, Coco for Cuckoo Puff, Sephiroth Puffs. But anyways, he's in this flashback, there's Sephiroth, You have Cloud the soldier, and then you have 2 normal guards. And the first time you play as Cloud as a soldier. The second time, it's revealed that Cloud is one of the normal soldiers, and instead, in place of Cloud, it's Zack. So, there's that. I think they changed it in Crisis Core, which is the prequel to Final Fantasy VII. So I think they changed it there, but that whole little segment where you, like, all the puzzle pieces that you've been seeing throughout the game, all these flashbacks, all these bits and pieces, all the reveals sought to fall into place. Really good. What can I say? The story is fantastic, more than I could ever explain it. I hope I did a good enough job. I'm sure if I got something wrong, you guys will tell me in the comments below, but there are more moments that happen throughout the game that I can barely explain. I might do a better job in my remaster, if I even do a remaster. Like I said, that's a thing. But for now, I'm done talking about the story. I lied. Editor Gob is back. I wanted to talk about Sephiroth real quick and why he's the main villain of the game. During the flashbacks, they went to Cloud's original town, and then they went up to the Shinra generator. Is it a generator? Whatever. They went up there. He discovers that he's not actually a human, but he is an ancestor, or so he believes. He's actually an experiment by Dr. Hojo. Again, I'm not going to talk about Hojo too much, but Hojo's a freak. He's just a scientist. He doesn't care about humanity in the slightest, and all he wants to do is make superpowered beings, or whatever. I'm not sure what he wants. I just know he's weird, especially in the Shinra Tower segment. He's just a little creep. But that's Sephiroth's thing. He's an ancestor. He wants to go to the Promised Land. He wants to exact revenge for the ancestors or something. He's the heir to the planet. He doesn't care. He wants to obtain the planet's power. He rips open the planet, and then he summons a big meteor to come down to smash into the planet in order to something. I forgot that little segment. I forgot what that's going to do. I think that causes a big burst of energy. If anything is going to be wrong in this video, it's that little part right there. Or maybe it's not being wrong, it's just I don't know. But I'm going to try to make a guess, and that was my guess. So maybe you can correct me in the comments below. But that's it. Editor Gob is out. The story gets 2 gold coins. And that's it. That's all my sections. Because you can count up the gold coins right now. It's kind of obvious what the game's going to get, but I'm extremely wary because, first of all, this game is super glazed. Like, whenever anybody talks about the best Final Fantasy game, of course, the best is subjective, but most people point to Final Fantasy VII. I don't want to be a sheep, follow the people, but it's not really being a sheep if you sit down and play the game for yourself, and you sit there and think about it, and like, I really enjoy this game. Usually, if you've watched my other reviews, I can't play through a game a second time, but I was really excited to actually play through this game a second time because I feel like there's some stuff I missed, but at the same time the story is just really good. And when you play through the second game, all the reviews and stuff, you start to see the actual build up more. You start to focus on it more because the build up's coming, but you start to see the pieces being laid out. Like the first time I didn't notice Kate Sif, the guy controlling them, I forget his name, Reeves? I think his name is Reeves, but I didn't notice how much of a, not an attitude, but how kind of against Shinra he is in the beginning. He's not completely against them. Of course, he still does betray you somewhat. But there's like little moments where he's actually going against the head and the president of Shinra and the other departments. And that's really cool. It just adds more to it. So I didn't want to give the game a great rating because I was afraid of it just being like, oh, of course, Final Fantasy VII is going to get one of the best ratings out of your series. Oh, who would have guessed? But I also didn't want to lowball it like, oh, you're just a contrarian hating on the game because it's popular or something. So I thought about that. I'm like, oh, I don't want to give it a lowball score, but I also don't want to give it a great score. And you know what? I don't care. If I like the game, who cares? Who cares if it's over glazed or not? I played the game for myself and developed my own opinions on it. That's what this whole review for is. My final rating for the game, 8 out of 5 gold coins. This game is fantastic. I highly recommend it. Not sponsored. Final Fantasy VII is really good. And like I said, I was also playing Final Fantasy VIII at the same time, and I can kind of see why Final Fantasy VIII isn't as popular as 7. But 9 and 10 are also really popular, and people also really like 15. I mean, people love 14, blah, 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 whatever. But I think I can confidently say Final Fantasy VII kind of deserves the glaze, okay? I don't like annoying people I don't think anybody likes annoying people, but you know, the people who are like, oh, this is the best one, all the others suck. No, I won't say it's the best one. I mean, it has the most gold coins, but I think there's others in the series that are probably going to get 8 out of... I hope there's other games in the series. I might give Final Fantasy 8 out of 5 just to spite you guys. Or not you guys, but all those other people. I really like 8. But I'll leave that for the Final Fantasy 8 review, okay? This is about 7. But I think that's all I have to say about Final Fantasy 7. My throat is starting to go dry. It's starting to hurt because I've been yapping too much. I've been rambling too much. This is the second time I recorded this, and the first time I got 40 minutes in, and now I'm getting way over an hour in, so hopefully I can cut it down some, but if you guys have made it this far, thank you for watching. If you haven't clicked off, thank you for watching. What else can I say? If you left a comment, thank you for commenting. I enjoy it as always. Even if you don't comment, again, thank you for watching. But if you guys enjoyed this video and want to see more of this Final Fantasy series, Final Fantasy VIII will be coming out shortly, trying really hard to get through the game as fast as possible, because Final Fantasy VII, I beat it like 3 months ago. Final Fantasy VIII, I beat it like 2 years ago. So it's been a while. I remember a lot about it, but playing through it again is really helping me formulate a better review than what I would have done. Same as playing through the bit of Final Fantasy VII that I did for this video. So if you want to see that, subscribe. I not only do video game RPG stuff, but I also do tabletop RPG stuff. Check out tabletop horror stories. Those are pretty fun. They get a lot of views. But I also do rants, and I do other video game reviews I haven't done in a while that isn't Final Fantasy, because I'm trying to do the Final Fantasy stuff. But if that interests you, subscribe. Like I said, become a gob today. My social media is in the description, so you can keep up to date to me with my thoughts or what's happening with me. And that's it. I hope you gobs have a lop of a day. Shilly shally, dilly dally.